8:15 on this Friday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Adrian Barry with you and Owen Shane, as always. Very good morning to you, Owen.
Morning, Adrian. How are things?
We've got the interesting accompaniment this morning of some live sport.
Yeah, it rarely happens. Happened in Melbourne in January. Might happen for the Rugby World Cup next year, but rarely
It will, yeah. It's sort of 8:30 in the morning, I think.
Yeah, you'd assume so. But this morning, Afghanistan against Ireland. Yesterday evening in the office was probably the biggest explosion I've ever seen of emotion at a UAE versus Zimbabwe game.
Right.
Because, of course, that opened the door for Ireland to qualify for
their own hands.
Exactly.
A win here secures the last of 10 places in next year's finals.
Yeah, exactly. The scoreboard has just disappeared as I was just about to give a scoreboard update.
14 out after about 4 overs, I think, from recollection of a couple of minutes ago. So, yeah, we'll keep you up to speed with that over the next little bit. We need to be off air by 9 o'clock, Owen, is the really key important thing for us this morning. Normally, the show does run 7:45 to 9, and normally we tip over a little bit. I mean, sometimes quite
significantly. It's been the half past for the last couple of days.
That's it, right. So, today, though, we need to be done by 9 o'clock. We've got to get out of here. There are going to be tickets on sale for the Rolling Stones at 9 a.m. Myself and Owen are kind of keen to get on them. Now, Owen has just, however, made the admission that he has previously, while he's been broadcasting to your good selves, bought tickets for a gig while on air.
In fact, it was actually one of our heavier duty mornings, not that it says that much on a Friday morning, when we were doing our Off the Ball Stars last November. Also happened to be the same day that LCD Sound System tickets went on sale for.
Get them first time, or did you have to spend a half an hour bouncing in and out to?
No,
I am not a robot.
In fact, it still hasn't sold out, so I definitely didn't need to be on my phone. But I'll make this admission, I was on my phone at 9 a.m. in the middle of a show trying to get tickets on Ticketmaster. I might do the same thing if I'm not responding to any of your questions at 9 a.m.
We've got to be done by 9, and that's it. It's a rule now. I think we're going to be talking to Kevin Kilbane just before 9, and let's just say, no matter what he's saying at that time, let's rudely interrupt and cut him off and get the hell out of here.
We must ask. I presume he's not a fan. Something about him tells me that he's not.
I would say he is. I used to be. I was definitely more of a Beatles fan when I was younger, but I think
then you realised they were a tad overrated.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that. I mean, I still think they're an incredible band, but I've definitely become more of a Stones man, really.
Yeah, they're a better band.
And I say that as if I'm some sort of a diehard fan. That definitely isn't the case. But I think everybody's a bit of a Rolling Stones fan. Everybody can get behind a bit of that good stuff, even though they're about 104, obviously.
Yeah, I'd say you're doing them a very good justice there by calling them only 104. I presume they're older. I think they're each and every one of them are Guinness World Record holders for the oldest men on planet Earth. It's all kind of a situation where it's like, could this be the last time we get to see the Rolling Stones? Of course, I'm not suggesting anything might happen. They might just stop touring. They might just stop touring. That's all I'm suggesting here.
I'm sure they will. I heard Ronnie Wood a few weeks ago saying that actually obviously I'd say most bands, no matter what age you are, have to go in and get a bit of for insurance reasons, get the old NCT done pre-tour, and he seemed as astonished as anybody that the doctor said, listen, you're good to go, mate, you go for it. I don't know if you've ever heard the story about the Rolling Stones going on the Lash and Nace.
No, I've heard no stories about anybody going on the Lash and Nace, so this should be good.
It's kind of maybe an urban myth, but a rural myth, but I've definitely heard from enough sources to believe that actually there's some veracity to it. So there's a pub in Nace. I probably shouldn't name it, but it's a pretty good traditional pub in Nace. Does a good pint, serves women by the glass only. That sort of a pub. Okay. And this is a number of years ago, the Rolling Stones. Ronnie Wood lives in Nace. That's the context here. So, or certainly in the surrounding areas. So Mick Jagger's over, and the lads decide they want to go for a pint in the middle of the afternoon. So off they head into Nace, into this particular establishment, set up shop there, have a couple of pints, and after a while, as people tend to do, they sort of get a bit of a want on them to sing a few tunes. So they get out the guitar, start strumming a few songs, and obviously the few people that are in the pub are like, holy shit, the Rolling Stones are in the pub and they're playing tunes. This is unbelievable. The owner comes over and he goes, listen lads, I'll have to ask you to pack it in. We're not really the sort of pub that does music. Thanks all the same, but could you pack it in?
No.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
So the lads are like, grand, no bother, we'll pack it in. Understood, we're with you, we get the vibe of the pub, that's fine. So they put the guitar away, they get back to the pints, and a little while later, a couple of pints later, they're like, listen, we're going to go for it again. Out come the guitars. A few more people in the pub, obviously, at this stage, and out come the guitars again, and straight into it they go again. And the owner comes back over to them, lads, let me not have to come over to you again. Could you put away the guitars? That's not the sort of pub we are. And they put the guitars away again. Few pints later, needless to say, Owen, you've guessed what happens. They have a couple of pints in them and they're getting the goo on. At this point, there's quite a crowd in the pub and they're all kind of obviously looking at the Rolling Stones going, holy hell, and there's some instruments there. They take the instruments out again, and inevitably, after a couple of minutes, the owner's back over. I mean, obviously the crowd are around, the owner's back over, and he said, listen lads, that's it, pack it in, I want no more of this music stuff. And at this point the Rolling Stones are like, does this guy fully realise who we are? So they say, listen mate, like, we're the Rolling Stones. Like, are you sure you want us to shut up? And the guy goes, I don't give a if you're Foster and Allen, shut up!
We need to get this bartender on the show. Whoever he is, this bar owner from Naas.
Yeah.
That's pure Irish, you know, being completely genuine about things. It's like, you know, you can't come into our pub and walk all over us. I don't care.
We've got our rules here.
Yeah.
It's a very traditional pub, as I've outlined.
Clearly. It's I know we've given recommendations for sports books quite a bit on this, but Paul Howard, of course, who's written Ross O'Carroll Kelly, wrote a great book on the life of Tara Brown, The Christmas Before Last, which I read, and it's an outstanding an outstanding account of Tara Brown's relationship with Mick Jagger and a couple of the other Rolling Stones, particularly in the Guinness estate in Wicklow, isn't it? And his life in London as well.
Lugala, is that the one?
Say that again?
Lugala in Wicklow, is that?
Yes, exactly. So it's a very, very good book. That's probably one of the better texts I've read, certainly from an Irish perspective, on the Rolling Stones, but presumably stories like that, there's just so many great Irish angles. But yeah, as we say, 9 a.m. this morning, the screen may just go blank.
No, no matter what's happening, the production team are just going to pull the plug and we're out of here. So that's what's going to happen this morning. Do keep our comments coming into us over the next hour and a little bit. If you're a Stones fan, if you're going to get tickets, do let us know. So we've lots of good stuff to come. We've great competition as well running, by the way, right across Off the Ball over the next few days, and I want to let you know how you can get involved in that. Bank of Ireland are giving their jersey sponsorship to the Irish Heart Foundation for Munster and Leinster rugby matches upcoming. So the Irish Heart Foundation, in association with Bank of Ireland, have teamed up with 300,000 school kids to launch the CPR for Schools training programme, which will equip teachers and students with life-saving training. You could win yourself a pair of tickets to Munster's Champions Cup quarter-finalists against Toulon. It's at Thomond Park, and you'll also land yourself a nice overnight stay in the Clayton Hotel. So to be able to chance, just tune into Off the Ball tonight on News Talk from 7 o'clock, and you get all the full details there with Ger and crew. It's all with thanks to Bank of Ireland and their sponsor for a day, the Irish Heart Foundation. So tune in to Off the Ball tonight from 7 and get yourself full details of that. We've a busy show upcoming for you. We are going to talk to Kevin Kilbane a little bit about the football. Ireland playing Turkey in Antalya tonight. I think I'm pronouncing
Antalya,
that. Yeah. Antalya.
Yeah.
Yeah, Antalya, great, in Turkey. We've had a lot of confusion about Turkish cities in the show over the last 24 hours. I don't know if you've been listening, but some confusion about the capital of Turkey, which is?
Ankara.
Excellent stuff. Nathan
Basic.
Murphy, not so much last
Fourth class geography right
rushed
there.
in with Istanbul. Rookie mistake.
2-footed challenge.
We're also going to talk a little bit more about the Capital Sports Grant situation that has been developing over the last number of days. Shane Ross has been out in the last 24 hours. I mean, it was good to hear from him at last. And he says that he had absolutely nothing to do with the process of awarding funding to a school in his constituency. So Owen's been out and about on the streets of Dublin yesterday to take a pulse of exactly what's happening on the ground. So Owen is going to bring us that report in a little bit, and we'll also discuss some more of that. And we're going to be joined on the line on Skype, I believe, by Ed Chamberlin, the ITV Racing host, who has been a busy man over the last few weeks with Cheltenham and all of that good stuff. But the flat season is upon us, and Ed, in partnership with the HRI, is going to help preview all of that good stuff. But right now, for the minute, it's time for the papers.
OTB AM.
In association with Air. Get Air Sport free with Air Broadband.
We're going to start with the Irish Examiner this morning, and it's a fairly grim story. It's Cyrus Christie. You don't speak out because nothing happens. Cyrus Christie lifts the lid on racism in football. It's kind of this angle again now of what happens when you do speak out, and as the headline suggests here, nothing does tend to happen. It's Liam Mackey's piece with him in Antalya, and I guess the grim nature of all of this is he describes the racial abuse he got on social media after the own goal against Denmark and the 5-1 loss in the second leg of the playoff, and just kind of his resigned sense that this is so utterly unsurprising. I fully expected to log onto Twitter and see this sort of stuff, because it's not the first time he's encountered it, and that football has kind of moved to the point now where you don't hear that stuff from the stands anymore. for numerous reasons. One of them may be because of better policing and like points being made of fans. I suspect it's not. I suspect it's because social media is just an easier alternative and a safer alternative for those scumbags out there who want to hide behind non-identity. So it's always important. Chrissy's spoken about it before. He's spoken about it again today. He's actually fascinating when he talks about this sort of stuff, and he's a great ambassador for this story basically, which isn't going anywhere.
No, I think and it's a good choice of words you use there as well. I think that it's probably to do with it becoming, and probably has past become, a cultural thing to not do. So I think that's the reasons it disappeared, if I'm being honest, from the terracism, from the stands and from sporting grounds, and generally in public it isn't really the accepted culturally thing to do. We've and there's been a huge piece of work done around that, and that's great. It's obviously does rear its pretty grotesque head on social media, and not always from people who are sort of hiding their identity, which is almost the worrying aspect of this. But we'd be mistaken, and it'd be wrong to take the approach, I believe, to the problem of racism in football by addressing it as a problem in football, because it really isn't, and it's a societal thing, and you don't really have to ever scratch too far in this country particularly to discover that it does exist, and it's pretty pervasive. And I do think that actually tackling it from a society point of view, rather than saying this is a football issue, would really be the way to go. But great stuff, and the more he speaks out, as painful as it might be for him, and there shouldn't be a requirement that he needs to do it, but the more he speaks out and the more it appears on the front pages of newspapers like the Examiner this morning, and fair play to them for doing it, the better. Yeah,
absolutely. It's not the only story about racism on the back pages today. We'll get to an English angle in The Guardian in a few moments there, Adrian, but I'm going to move on to the Irish Independent. "I'm not angry with Taylor," reads the headline here. That's a quote from Seamus Coleman. "He's not wasting his time thinking about the Welsh player who broke his leg." That's Dan MacDonald and John Fallon's story on the back of the Indo. It seems to be a theme doing the rounds on a lot of the back pages this morning, but before I move on, leg injury rules Larmour out of Leinster's Euro quarter-final showdown with Saracens. It's Cian Tracy's story today in the Indo, and that is big news indeed for Leinster. And also, a story which you might have missed yesterday, which broke, was that Claire Sarah O'Donnell earns Harvard scholarship, so he could potentially be missing for the Clare hurlers next season. But I think the biggest element of this is that Shane O'Donnell's got a scholarship to do his PhD in Harvard University, so congratulations to him. I'm not quite sure. So
he on the spot there.
Yeah, well, when it comes to a PhD, it's a Fulbright scholarship, so I'm not sure, do you have to submit what your candidature is going to be, or what you're actually going to do it on? I certainly haven't seen what the story. If anybody out there does know what Shane O'Donnell is going to go do his PhD in, please do get in touch, because that's the first question I had as well. So yeah, the likelihood is he's going to be missing for a good chunk of next season.
Big loss for Clare, obviously, and a guy that had started to show that he isn't just a goal merchant, that he can actually pick scores off from elsewhere as well. So huge loss, but fair play to him.
Yeah, absolutely. It's back to the football. Waste of time. "I refuse to think about Taylor," says Coleman. That's Philip Quinn's angle on that story, while Zlatan bids farewell to United ahead of LA move. Confirmed yesterday, the story broken by ESPN, that Zlatan is no more at Manchester United. He's going to move to LA Galaxy at the end of the season. Let's just move on. Coleman: "I hold no grudge over a leg break tackle. It's time to forget and carry on." That's the back of the Mirror. As I say, that is the story doing the round. You've also got Christie there carried in the Mirror with his comments on racism. The back of the Sun then, meanwhile, says it wasn't a great tackle, but these things happen. That's the Turkey versus Ireland build-up once again, and Seamus Coleman saying he's got no grudge against Taylor. And then the other one, the last football story really from me for the time being, is this one, and it's back to Liam Kelly. "Keen to stay green. Kelly still wants Ireland career." It's an exclusive by Mark McCadden here in the Irish Daily Star. Kelly isn't quoted in this story, but McCadden makes the point that he is committed to the boys in green, and that this whole text message situation with Martin O'Neill isn't as big a deal as we might have thought, or people who thought it was a big deal might have thought. So obviously he was born in England and all that, but he still has ambitions to play for the Republic of Ireland. It's just a pretty tough stage in Reading season after Jaap Stam got sacked and all of that sort of stuff. So I think that's a factor in that. As I say, it's not quoted, so we don't know what Kelly himself is saying, but the sounds are that club factors have been the main reason why Liam Kelly didn't accept the call-up.
Yeah, we also don't know the details of that yet. That's the issue with it, that we don't know, certainly that I've heard, how he was contacted by way of a call-up. Like, was he text to say, here, we're going to include you in the squad. Would you like to come and join us? And then he replied via text. We just don't know. And so actually hearing some of that detail would be good. But yeah, like the lack of an actual quote from him or from somebody to actually tell us exactly what it is that's all about. But I'm sure we'll find out a bit more over the next while. Right, from my end here, the front page of the Irish Times sports section this morning, it is really all about the football here. These Cyrus Christie comments featuring here with Emmett Malone, who's in Turkey for this game tonight. Captain Coleman back bearing no grudges. There was really 2 or 3 storylines that came out of the press conference yesterday ahead of this game this evening. And Ireland hold out hopes for a striking difference. So what the hell are we going to do in the absence of any recognised and regular goal scorer at a decent level is kind of the main thing that I'm certainly considering. That like whatever shape Martin O'Neill, and he's talking now about a 3-5-2, whatever shape he puts on the team, whatever players he ultimately brings in, we don't have somebody who can score goals. So are we actually doomed to failure no matter what happens?
It's time to back Seanie Maguire. It's time to say to Seanie Maguire, listen, you're going to be the first choice, number 9 for the Republic of Ireland. Here's the jersey, son. Go do it. That's what we should do. Back Seanie Maguire. I'm not sure about you, but I would certainly believe that his trajectory is still very much on the rise, and in fact it could point even more vertical.
It's him or bust really is the thing though, and like he isn't also playing at the top level, and
but he will eventually.
Still not that like fully regularly, so you hope he will eventually, and we all hope he will eventually, and we hope that happens sooner rather than later, and actually he is a guy we can get behind. But I definitely have concerns on doomed to failure is what I'm going with this morning.
Back Seanie is all I'm saying.
Easter Promise, so this is obviously in relation to the football as well, on the front page of the Herald this morning, previewing that game, and more good stuff inside from Giles Pope and Frank Roach as well. The Racing Post this morning with the flat season ahead of us has a full-on good pull-out here of the flat season, which gets underway here in Naas. This Sunday we're going to be talking to Ed Chamberlin about that in a little bit. But also, millionaire owner banned for laying his own horse is the headline from the Racing Post today, and this is in relation to an owner who's denied any wrongdoing. Stephen Burdett from Scunthorpe in the UK disqualified with immediate effect after being found to have broken the rules as a registered owner on 2 occasions when he laid a couple of his horses. And yeah, so that was it. He says he's massively disappointed to be disqualified for what is just an innocent mistake. So you can get more details on that story there in the Racing Post. The Telegraph this morning, I mean, it's the one you've all wanted to see to pour over the outcome of England's tragic and pretty chronic defeat. 58 all out, was that the...
Yeah, that was their innings against New Zealand yesterday.
New Zealand, yeah.
It's been just a desperate week for English sport in general, and we don't really care about the cricket, obviously, but since we're in the kind of mode of English bashing, we may as well add this to our ammo and say screw you England once again.
It's pretty good, to be fair. They've done a good job on sort of visually describing exactly what a shit show was happened yesterday.
Yeah.
That's the Telegraph. The Guardian here, embarrassing is what they go with. It's pretty simple there. And more reflections on that defeat yesterday. Southgate's races of morning, get our house in order before criticising Russia. This is really great stuff from Gareth Southgate, I have to say. It really speaks to the point that we've just been making, that it's very easy to go those pesky Russians and their approach to and their behaviour around all those sort of things, and actually holding a mirror up to ourselves is probably not a bad place to be. That's kind of the newspapers this morning on. Is that pretty much it?
That is indeed, yeah. That's the newspapers rounded up. Kind of Ireland dominating the headlines. As I say, we'll be speaking to Kevin Kilbane a little bit later on at around, I guess, 10 to 9. Yeah. And if he happens to be mid-sentence at
it doesn't matter.
8:59, the screen is going to go blank and it's goodbye, Kevin. We need to get Rolling Stones tickets.
Get out of here. If he's watching, he'll know in advance, and we'll tell him. We're out at 9 o'clock, buddy, so wrap it up.
Is he going to be in his kitchen? Is he going to be in the airport, in the Aer Lingus Lounge? Or is he...
international man of mystery, where would he be of a Friday morning? We'll find out shortly. It's 8:05 on this Friday morning. We are delighted to have you along with us, and we've loads of comments coming in. We're going to bring you some of those and we want your involvement too in our next topic. We've been giving it lots of coverage this week, and then we decided that actually sending Owen out and about around the streets of Dublin to get a bit of a sense of exactly what it is that's going on will be a wise idea. So that's exactly what we've done. We're going to speak to the Labour councillor Rebecca Moynihan very, very shortly on all of that. But yesterday afternoon, Owen went down to the south inner city Dublin, an area with a population, as we've been hearing over the course of the week, of 50,000 people, but without a single full-sized sports pitch available in the area. He caught up with Tommy Daly and JJ O'Mahony from Kevin's GA Club, and with Tom McGee as well from the Liberty Saints Rugby Club. The piece was put together by Niall McGrath, who went down to the Liberties with Owen.
This is St Theresa's Gardens in south inner city Dublin, an area with a population the same size as Waterford City. But there isn't a single pitch for children here to play on. We caught up with a few of the locals around here, and Tommy Daly here is involved with Kevin's GAA club.
Well, the area we're standing in, Owen, is the top of Dunor Avenue in Dublin 8. There's 50,000 people in the Liberties and Dublin 8 from the 2011 census. 8 parishes: Meath Street, Francis Street, James Street, Dunor Avenue, Dolphins Barn, Rialto, Whitefriar Street. 50,000 people, and we're Kevin's Hurling and Camogie club. We've been promoting GAA hurling and camogie since 1902 continuously, and there's the big problem all sports clubs have in this area is the lack of facilities. There isn't one playing pitch for those 50,000 people in all of that area that's big enough to hold an official game of soccer, GAA or rugby. There's small patches of grass which are no good. We want to promote sport. We're trying to get young people engaged in and to reap the benefits of participating in organised competitive sport. And it's very difficult, almost impossible to do that for the clubs in the area, because they have to bring their kids outside to play games. We're Kevin's Hurling and Camogie club. Liberty Saints are active here in the area with a couple of rugby teams. There's numerous soccer teams. St Catherine's Football Club, Liberties FC, Usher Celtic, Ainger Celtic. There's a number of clubs gone out of existence because for all our games we have to bring them out. If you have a 13-year-old girl like JJ, for example, he brings her from this area to Jude's, to the foot of the mountain in Tala, to play ladies football. And St Catherine's there play the home games at Walkinstown Cross. Usher Celtic play their games out in Island Bridge or even further in the Phoenix Park. So it's very difficult on a sustained basis to run teams under 10s, under 12s. Somebody say, why don't you play in the Phoenix Park? It's very hard to walk a team of 10-year-olds from here to the Phoenix Park twice a week and back again. Suddenly they dwindle into nothing. So we've been actively campaigning as a group, Sporting Liberties, for the last 3.5 years. As part of the redevelopment of this area, we're here in St Catherine's National School, right beside Theresa's Gardens, which is a flats complex of 12 blocks of flats, which in the next, most of them are almost knocked down now. And as part of that regeneration, we've been actively campaigning that a full-size, multi-purpose sports field be encompassed in that. And hopefully that will be delivered in 5 years' time, we've been promised, as part of that redevelopment. Now that's replacing 2 old soccer pitches, but that's the only thing that's in the area, that's due in the area over the next five years.
Were a pitch to be built in this area, it will be behind me here in place of these flats. Tom McGee is president of Liberty Saints Rugby Club, and he explained that situation.
Okay, so this area encompasses, I think it's 8 or 9 parishes. There's 55,000 people. There's about 10 schools, primary and secondary. And not a whole lot of areas for people to play or to get involved. You can see over here there's kids trying to play on swings and stuff. There's just no recreational facilities here. There's certainly no areas that a team could survive or play games or play team sports. So us as a rugby club, we play all of our home games. We play away. We train at the back of St James's Primary School on a plot of land which is about the size of 2 tennis courts. So I guess we're all part of a group called Sporting Liberties, campaigning in this area for the provision of sport facilities and sporting fields for our community to play team sports.
We had a massive campaign and a lot of with the housing crisis. We came up against a lot of hurdles because there's a huge need to provide housing in the city, and but with the support of local politicians, really the local councillors, some people within Dublin City Council, and against some massive opposition as well from people within the council, we've succeeded in as part of the master plan now, there is a plan for one multi-purpose sports field in this area. There will be a temporary one, a smaller one, delivered. It's planned to be delivered at the end of this year, but in 5 years' time a full one is part of the plan. It was advertised last week in the paper, for example, as Part 8 planning, is applicable to this site. So it is part of the plan. In fairness, after the campaign, Dublin City Council have now committed to delivering this, and that's very welcome for this area.
In 5 years' time, if we go with what Dublin City Council have planned, there'll be a pitch here. There'll be 47 teams queuing up to get on and play it, and it'll probably be the busiest pitch in Europe. But it'll be something. In the best case scenario, we would have the pitch here. We'd also have some sort of a sporting campus or pitches down in Marylebone Lane, and who knows where else we could, if people took us seriously and realised that what we're saying is actually, the injustice of what we're saying is actually true. 55,000 people, no pitches, 10 schools with nowhere to go and play a game of football.
A bigger issue for us, having campaigned for Kevin's Hurling and Camogie Club, having campaigned for a number of years to get an extra field, to get a field in this area. The area where we play our games, our GAA pitches on the Crumlin Road, which is just outside Dolphins Barn. The GAA, we've learned, and it's happening, the GAA are pulling the wool from beneath us, pulling the carpet from beneath us. They're basically selling GAA lands in Crumlin Road. That's Dolphin Park in Crumlin Road is the nearest sports fields to this area of 50,000 people. And here we are in inner city Dublin, where there's no pitch, I've just already explained, and the GAA are selling 3 sports fields. How are we to continue with it? We've 18 teams in the club at the moment. We share the field with another GAA club who own the land, and they have 18, they've 26 teams. There's 44 teams in all sharing those pitches. How are those? It's not possible to continue to exist or even grow with less sports fields. It's a crying shame, in my opinion. It's poor form from the GAA's point of view. I would be calling on the new Ard Stewart to immediately get involved and intervene and prevent the sale of these lands in inner city Dublin.
Questions surrounding the Sports Capital programme have come right into view once again this week as a result of Shane Ross's Twitter account. Here's JJ O'Mahony, who's also well involved with Kevin's GAA.
It's in this area here that we've campaigned. We started probably 5 or 6 years ago to get playing pitches in here, and it's going to be in around this area here. We hope to get a cross pitch hopefully within 2 years, and within 5 years then they're saying is that they're going to put a full pitch. So it's critical that that's delivered. If there's anything to expedite that process with 5 years, like, it would be more than welcome, and it's an essential part really what's required in the community.
Look, we've been talking about this injustice for the last 5-6 years. The fact that Minister Ross put his foot in it in terms of the Dave Kearney, Rob Kearney tweet and him being Minister for Sport and allocating money to Wesley College when we're screaming for just the basics of a plot of land, just again highlights the inequality that goes on in Dublin, in Ireland, in politics, and we're I suppose on the receiving end of it, and these communities are on the receiving end of it. Just look around you, there's nothing here. There's no kids playing football, there's no kids playing hurling, there's no kids playing rugby, there's no kids playing anything. There's no team sports around here whatsoever. You'll see the kids up there in the school, they're playing hurling in the yard, playing the ball against the wall, but where's the top there? They go out to the pitch then and suddenly go on and become club players and stalwarts in the community, same as everybody else does around the rest of Ireland. No, because there's nowhere to go. They go and they get involved in probably negative things with other aspects of life and other sides of life, that because they're just deprived of the opportunity to get involved in anything positive.
I keep saying is that our local TDs have been too silent for too long, and this is just like a storm in a teacup and may go away, but I don't think it should be. I mean, this is arisen because of the allocation of funds, and it'll probably blow over, but what we're talking about is something that's going to be over 20-30 years and influence the lives of so many people around the place. So I call on the Minister Vacker to do the same as Enda Kenny did in the north side, and maybe make this his project and take responsibility for the young people. So there's 4,500 kids under the age of 14 in this area, and what are we going to do? Just turn our backs in a minute, abandon them as a society? This is Minister Vacker, you should come down here, see what's going on, and make a difference. And your legacy will be this in this part of in this part of Dublin, and it would be a fantastic legacy to have, because you will be unquestionably, to me, saving lives as well.
Yeah, that's Owen Shane, who is with us in studio, reporting from inner city Dublin yesterday in a pretty interesting piece. I think you'll agree, screaming for the basics, and 5 years it seems as if some sort of a solution is going to take that length of time to figure some sort of solution around this. I'm delighted to say that to continue the conversation, because it is an important one, as our final contributor JJ O'Mahony pointed out there, is the Labour councillor for the area, Rebecca Moynihan, joining us on the line. Good morning, Rebecca, and thanks a lot for taking the call. Can we strip this back a bit just to begin with, because it's not a question that I've heard really addressed very much this week. Can you talk to us just a little bit about why it's important to have this conversation and why sport particularly is important to that area?
Well, I think if you listen to the segment earlier on, you'll see the number of teams that need a space that's there. The inner city of Dublin, the southwest inner city, and the north inner city has the same issue, though it's slightly separate, is one of the most deprived areas of the city. You have large drug gangs that are operating out of it. You have kids that have a higher chance of going to prison than elsewhere in the country. And I think organised sport, where you have mentors and you have people that are guiding and mentoring and looking after people, having the discipline of a sport, having, the social circle of a sport, having something to take up your time, is really, really important, particularly from kids that are coming from that background. And I think if you look at some of the sports stars, it can certainly save people. And as JJ says, it saves people's lives. And in this area, since the gangland war has started, there's a high amount of police presence, not at community level, but in terms of stopping people being able to get around. So you have the traffic stops that happen and the checkpoints that are taking place. And the state long term could save money if it invested in very, very basic sports facilities for younger people, so they weren't getting involved in those activities and they weren't getting involved in those areas, which they are at the moment at a really young age. Yeah,
that 4,500 kids under the age of 14 was certainly one line that jumped out for me from that piece. And for those kids not to have some sort of an outlet that's involved in sport, and I mean, you've mentioned some of the social issues that exist, the call for the Taoiseach to get involved seems like a pretty legit one.
Absolutely. And I would also say this both about the southwest inner city, which is an area of my particular interest, and the north inner city as well, because I started a campaign a couple of years ago, not just sports spaces, but actually green spaces. And when you look at the map of Dublin, it's quite visible where the lack of green spaces and lungs are for young people on the west side of the city and the west side of the inner city. But having enough space for organised sports facilities, and I think that's key, not just throwing in, the side of a pitch, but making sure that teams can organise long term and you have a large enough space for organised sports is really, really important. And I think it's been highlighted this week when, we started a campaign, and I worked very heavily with Kevin's at the time of the development plan, even to get the framework for a space that could be put in place for something like this. And when I saw what Wesley College, which is a private college, which serves a much smaller number of people, what they had just themselves in terms of sports facilities, in comparison to what an area of 50,000 people has within a small defined area, it really, really is. It shows the difference between the two Irelands.
Yeah, I think if this area of Dublin was in a position to have anything resurfaced, they'd be very, very happy for a start. But one of the things that struck me from being down there yesterday was these two former soccer pitches that seem to have been closed down for over a decade at this point. They're completely sealed off. We couldn't even get in to get a shot of the place. And that kind of is symptomatic of, I would imagine, the frustrations that people like you feel around this, that there are plots of land here, albeit they are quite small and they wouldn't get everybody involved for sure, but there are parts of land which just are inaccessible, and for some reason, I don't know if you might outline the reasons for this.
Okay, so that plot of land isn't quite small. The sports pitches are quite small, but it's 20 hectares on what's called the St. Teresa's Gardens and its environment site, but it's owned by 3 different people. So one section is owned by Dublin City Council, one section is owned by what is the former Bailey Gibson site, and the other section is the former Player Will site, both of which are in receivership, and I think Grant Thornton are the people who are the receivers there. So it's not within the bounds of possibility that you make sure, if the Boys Brigade pitches, which are at the back of the side and then they adjoin that private land, there's a requirement that private land has a 10% public open space requirement anyhow. So we could definitely negotiate with the receivers. We could definitely even purchase a slither of land from them. We've negotiated with the receivers down in Kilbane. You know, we swap sites, swap land, or buy land all the time in Dublin City Council. So it's absolutely not beyond the bounds possibilities. And it doesn't just have to be a small pitch of land. So just to say that, like, when you look at the bigger site, the overall site, it definitely is the possibility to do that. The Boys Brigade pitches were closed off in anticipation of the redevelopment of St. Teresa's Gardens when I first came onto the City Council back in 2009. And at that stage, one of the things where there was a certain amount of antisocial behaviour that was being caused around there, because it was at the very back of St. Teresa's Gardens, and it was difficult to get in and out when you have the two other derelict sites to the side. What we tried to do in the development plan, in order to create a framework to have a longer term site, because councillors had power over the development plan, is to make sure that the Boys Brigade pitches site stayed zoned a green field site, which I don't think was an unreasonable thing to do. There was huge resistance at the City Council level from City Council managers, and at every stage of that process it goes through 2 or 3 stages where it goes out to public consultation. They resisted, they tried to change it, and they argued very heavily against keeping those lands on site, and they said that there would be a public park at the front of the St. Teresa's Garden site. But also the resistance came from the Department of Environment and Local Government, and they hinged the funding for the redevelopment of the houses on the basis of us rezoning those boys Brigade pitches and having a different master plan in the area. I'm really glad to say, like, we held tight as local councillors in the area. We held very tight. We fought very hard. We got other council colleagues on side. We lobbied extensively, both publicly and privately as well. So we do have that commitment now. But it was a very, very tough battle. And it always struck me at the time that it was really difficult to make that argument that, like, there's 50,000 people live in that area. It's not just up to the inner city to address the housing crisis. Where you have a population and a density of people living in an area like that, you also need services to go along with them. You can't just pile people high in housing and think that that's going to solve it. And the difference between, let's say, how the suburbs are treated and how the inner city are treated in terms of what available services they can have, it's quite distinct. Like, we got our first public park opened in October, first public park in over 100 years. We had the equivalent size area in the east side of the city, the southeast side of the inner city, had 14 times more green open space than we had. We had 1 hectare and they had 14 hectares.
It does strike me, certainly as you're talking and looking at the information here, that actually this isn't really just entirely to do with the sports capital grant either, that actually it's much more significant than that isn't really going to go and solve it. And there's been a lot of conversation about it this week, and some of the language that you're using there in terms of the resistance that's coming from apparently a pretty significantly high level. We've had discussions on the show, a lot of discussions this week. I'm not 100% convinced that this is a class issue or always a class issue. Why is that resistance coming, or why is it taking 100 years to get a public park, and why are you struggling so much to get funding? And I guess it seems like it's more than that, like it's almost trying to get a swathe of opinion at a high level to get behind you on this.
Yeah, absolutely. That places like the inner city, where a lot of people who are in high levels of the public service don't have to live, and they drop in and out, and they don't look at it as a viable area where they would want to live. And
so
they don't
you are
really care
saying it's a class issue, Rebecca?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think where you have officials who are in charge of it, they don't live in that area, and it's really difficult to make the argument about the importance of services to go along with dense housing. And the argument that was thrown at us in the development plan all the time was that we needed housing in the city, we needed housing in the city, we needed housing in the city. And that is absolutely true. But in terms of like density, so the number of people living per square metre in the city, the inner city is one of the highest, and particularly around this area of the Liberties, around Cork Street, where you have large apartment blocks and you have high density, where people don't have their own back garden. And I'm much more in favour of like communal green space than I am for private green space, but you do need to provide those facilities along with it. It's not just the sports capital grants. And one of the things about the sports capital grants, like by the time you get to the stage of a sports capital grants, you're already very, very advanced. You also have to be able to get matched funding. You have to get your local authority behind you. What this is trying to do is, 10 steps ahead of like applying for sports capital funding, which is to basically get a commitment that there's a certain amount of space that will be handed over to, the teams that are operating in the area, of which a large number of children are already involved in. Like you heard, I think it was Tommy who was talking there today, between I think it's Sing Street and St Kevin's, you have 44 teams. You also have Liberty Saint. You have a boxing club that needs that needs a premises as well. You have football clubs, like we have a couple of five-a-side pitches, but that's not really big or large enough for what our needs are for organised sports that really helps young people.
Like you talk about the sheer numbers that are there, the number of clubs. Like it almost seems insurmountable as a whole to get around this. And we've been hearing about the 5-year plan, and I know, having read a piece from about 12 months ago, that Dublin City Council certainly say that they're committed to getting involved in solving this one. Where does it all go from here?
Well, I think if you look at a problem as being insurmountable, you don't start doing the very basic thing. We started doing the very basic thing and trying to get the land rezoned, that we at least had a commitment to space. Now, once you get that, we have Dublin City Council who are committed to it. But I also think that the GAA have a responsibility in this. And you hear Tommy talk about the GAA selling on the land that they have in Dolphin Park. The GAA, which are a very, wealthy organisation, have a commitment to try and make sure, and a community commitment to make sure that young kids in the inner city have the same access to services and have the same access to the amazing organisation that the GAA is in inner city Dublin that it has elsewhere. And I think the GAA, with their political clout, with their power, with their access to those individuals who, let's say, at high levels of departments are able to make those decisions, I think they really need to step up to the plate when it comes to something like this.
Yeah, that was almost going to be my last question there regarding the GAA, regarding Dolphin Park. Do you think that kind of sums up attitudes in other areas below the Liffey, south of the Liffey, towards this part of Dublin, that potentially people aren't as helpful with grounds that might be on the periphery of your boundary?
Yeah, but I think it's difficult. I suppose you have to kind of look at sometimes young people within the inner city won't travel very far because there's a real siege mentality. So I do think having something local that younger people feel belongs to them is kind of important, as opposed to going and visiting places. And that's another story altogether. I do think that Sing Street have been very helpful and have facilitated. But the idea that the GAA would sell off land just to make more money, where what there is a crying need is to make sure that there are still sports facilities that are retained in the city. And it is a problem, I think, that the city has, that municipal sports facilities and public sports facilities are one of the things that are lacking. When you see the number of gyms that are popping up, like, people pay for that, people want that. That is something that people need when we're living on top of each other. But we really need to prioritise municipal sports facilities for organised sports, for swimming pools. It's a bigger area. But I do think when it comes to particularly this issue, and one of the oldest clubs in Ireland, I think the GAA need to step up to the plate. And I think only they have the power to really be able to deliver on this.
Rebecca Moynihan, thanks a lot for joining us this morning. Rebecca Moynihan, Labour councillor in Dublin 8, Crumlin Kimmage. We're going to be coming back to the story, needless to say, over the next while. Bunch of comments coming into us, and do keep them coming in on the Facebook page. On the hashtag as well, OTB AM, on YouTube and all of that good stuff. On Facebook, Jenny Kern says, this is going on too long. Time for the TDs to step up. We can't fail these kids. Unfortunately, that's exactly what we're doing, and it's difficult, even off the back of that conversation, to see an easy end to it. Brian Moore says, disgraceful treatment of both our nation's children and the amazing people who give their time with childhood obesity at record levels. We need to react now, not to mention the social development skills attributed to team sports. And Brian Duggan echoes that point about the lack of any meaningful activity, as he puts it, by politicians, and help by the GAA shouldn't be overlooked. I always thought Kevin's got a raw deal after Sing Street and Temple Oak GAA clubs amalgamated. The sharing arrangement seemed to be a lot more harmonious before that happened. He says Kevin's were definitely left as the poor relation, and calling on the GAA to step up.
Yeah, just one last thing I'd say on that. I'm sure you managed to pick it up yourself, but JJ O'Mahony, the last voice in that piece, clearly isn't a Dublin accent, clearly isn't from that part of Dublin. He's actually from East Cork, and obviously there's something about the place that he really believes in, that he's seen maybe either the natural skill level or whatever the lack of any sort of facility in that part of Dublin, where he's taken it upon himself to become very involved with Kevin's hurling and camogie club to try and make this thing happen. He's unbelievably passionate about it, and he's come in from the outside, so to speak. So that sums up everything, I think, very well. And JJ spoke extremely well in that piece, I thought, to try and sum up the fact that this, in essence, could save a couple of lives. Yeah,
I mean, 4,500 kids under the age of 14. It's 50,000 people in the population. It strikes me as coming from a town, Athlone, with a population of around 20,000, and the sports facilities that exist across that entire area. Now, like, the land is the issue. Trying to get the land is obviously a significant issue. It can't just be sort of popped out of nowhere, and that's going to be an ongoing thing for them. But it does strike me that the lack of facilities is, I mean, it's dangerous, is how I describe it.
Yeah, as I said, it's the same population as Waterford City. It's incredible. It's got double the population of a place like Tralee, and like, we've got to be very important to not be begrudging towards places that have done very well in these sports capital grants. For the most part, they deserve it, and it is worth pointing out that there's some fantastic facilities about to be installed in Tralee, in their Tralee IT, but it is still a €7.5 million grant. It's bigger than anything else that was given in the country. They've got half the population of Dublin City Centre. Again, Tralee deserve that money. They deserve to put this facility in place, which is going to serve the community very, very well. But it is also worth pointing out that there is places of huge populations of kids that are being served to no end.
Shane Ross did, I mean, it took him some time, and in the context of the quotes that he delivered yesterday, it's almost more head-scratching why he didn't come out a bit earlier, because he said he had nothing to do with the allocation of the funding to Wesley College. He says that he signed off on it but had no input at all in the process, or indeed around the appeals, made no representations. He just signed off on it, and the biggest mistake he made was to tweet about it. Keep your comments coming into us. Hashtag OTB AM. We're going to talk to Kevin Kilbane before we leave you at 9 o'clock, because we've got to be out of here. If you've only just joined us, myself and Owen, got to be done at 9 AM regardless of what else is going on, because we want to get tickets for the Rolling Stones. Because Owen's not sure they're going to live much longer, so that's really the...
No, I think they're just going to stop touring. I think they're going to go and, go into a different career or something.
Take something out? You just take up a PhD maybe, or sort of...
Do a PhD, try and get a scholarship to Harvard, become classmates with Shane O'Donnell, is what the Rolling Stones are going to
do. Digger was in touch to say that we were wondering what PhD Shane O'Donnell was going to do when he goes to Harvard. He says that he recently graduated with a degree in genetics from Cork, from the Cork College, so he thinks it might be genetics related.
Wow, okay, a PhD in genetics from Harvard. Probably looks quite good on your CV. Not as good as scoring a hat-trick in an All-Ireland final replay.
Absolutely not. No doubt about that at all. Going to talk to Ed Chamberlin, the sports broadcaster, ITV front-of-house man for Cheltenham, of course, and big into his racing. So the flat season is upon us. We're going to talk to Ed Chamberlin very shortly. But before all of that, John Giles was on the show last night. He joined Nathan and the rest of the team, and he had lots of good stuff to say, including this.
A total joke. We played in Ankara.
How was that?
Ankara wasn't the nicest of places. The pitch was a quagmire. We got beaten on the day. There was and it was funny in Ankara. I don't know what it's changed now, but even during the day, when we were in, there was like thousands of people wandering around. Like about 15,000, 20 came to see us training. That's how bad it was. And
was that a hostile atmosphere, or just happy to see
you? Totally hostile. In fact, I think I mean, Duffy played in the match. I think somebody gave him a kick or something coming off. We were beaten as well, and it was the bad old days when the selectors played the picked the team.
The team, yeah.
And because I remember, it was around February time, and in those days you didn't have to be automatically released, and it was February, and because Don Redwood obviously, I don't want you going there. I said, no, I'd like to go to Turkey. Actually, I thought nice and sunny, you get a bit of a break from the winter in England, and went over, nightmare, snow, freezing cold. The pitch was a quagmire. We got beat, and they were totally hostile. That was my first experience.
Biggest thing for me from that item was that Nathan Murphy doesn't know the capital of Turkey, and that's the short story there.
Disgraceful. I know, Istanbul goes back a long way. I'm sure Nathan will be able to tell everybody about the history of Byzantium and Constantinople, but he clearly just
wrote songs about that stuff.
He clearly got just lost in the history of the place and didn't realise where the government buildings are located.
Had me second guessing. I was listening to it in the car, and I thought, so it was like, what's the capital? John said, what's the capital of Turkey? On the straight in, Ankara.
Nathan Murphy being confident in false information.
And then he goes Istanbul, and I was like, oh shit, right, didn't know that. And then inevitably he was obviously mistaken. It's 25 to 9 on this Friday morning. We're delighted to have you along with us here on OTB AM. Keep your comments coming on into us over the next 25 minutes or thereabouts. Kevin Kilbane upcoming, and I understand as well we're going to be speaking to somebody from the Department of Sport on the show this evening. So that'll be our opportunity to put some of these points that we've been discussing over the last 3 or 4 days.
Brendan Griffin is going to be on this evening's show from 7 o'clock. He is Minister of State for Sport and Fine Gael TD for County Kerry, so that should be a very interesting piece. Okay, racing. ITV Racing commentator Ed Chamberlin visited Johnny Murtagh and team to meet their new syndicate horse, Lord Rapscallion, for the first time during the week. And Ed, along with Horse Racing Ireland, is promoting horse ownership and syndication ahead of the exciting flat racing season, which, as you've been hearing, gets underway at Naas this coming Sunday. And I'm delighted to say that Ed joins us on the line. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, guys. How are you doing?
Very good. Thanks for taking the call. Cheltenham was the first thing I wanted to talk to you about. How was it for you?
Oh, man. Cheltenham's something else, to be honest. It's like no other meeting during the year. It had everything last week. It had heartbreak, it had sadness, but it also had a lot of joy and elation. And it's the most intense week of the year. Royal Ascot's intense, but Cheltenham's on a different level, really. And you Irish gave us a hell of a beating during the week. You really did. Yeah, we seem to have a bit of a knack for it now over the last few years. Before we get into maybe some of that, I just wanted to, because I think a lot of people over this side of the water as well would be very familiar with you and your name and your face from a very different sphere. So your background in racing, I read that your grandfather was a bit of a fan. That's right. Back in the day, I used to sit with my grandfather and watch the ITV7, which is now back in business. And I always wanted to work in horse racing, if truth be told. But my career took a bit of a strange path. I worked as a bookmaker and then got into magazines and used to go on TV to promote my magazine, and Sky picked me up from there. So I then ended up at Sky in sort of early 2000s, I suppose, and worked my way up the ladder onto Sky Sports News and did the sport on Sky News. And then my world changed overnight in 2009. You'll remember with Andy Gray and Richard Keys and everything that happened there. And then I obviously got the job doing Super Sunday and Monday Night Football with a certain Gary Neville. Yeah, an unbelievable gig, and you had a really good thing going. I think you were there for about 16 years. You had the live football, and as you say, you had come in after the previous regime. Monday Night Football, obviously a very successful product. What sort of must have been a difficult decision to give all that up? Yeah, it was. I think a lot of people thought I was absolutely mad. When I told my 8-year-old son, he burst into tears and said, "What have you done, Daddy?" and you know, I get asked on the high street every day, you know, why did you give up Premier League football to go into horse racing? But listen, it was always a dream of mine to do it. As soon as ITV approached me, it's what I wanted to do. I love my job at Sky, don't get me wrong, and I realised how lucky I was. But, you know, sometimes in life you've got to take a risk, and to go into racing was what I've always wanted to do, and I don't regret it for a second. It's been an unbelievable 14 months or so, a seriously cool ride. I don't want to dwell on your football career too long, but in terms of the Monday Night Football stuff, that's very interesting because to a certain extent it was quite revolutionary. As you mentioned, a few of the former broadcasters, there was a different element to that, certainly, to what we have now in Monday Night Football, and you were a key part of that, I presume. Was it you, was it producers, was it actually Gary Neville who was involved and sat down and was like, right, there's clearly a huge market here for intelligent football fans who want intelligent football pundits to tell them the deeper meaning of what's gone on at the weekend? That's a really good question. Listen, it was a massive team effort, and everything you say there is right. We always wanted to be different, and on Monday Night Football we always wanted to be at the cutting edge and be innovative. I had a brilliant production team. A guy called Scott Melvin was the producer. But listen, I'd be lying if I didn't say that Gary Neville was absolutely at the heart of it. I mean, if you know Gary, he wants to be Prime Minister, he wants to be everything. He directed, produced, would have presented it if he could. I mean, he was incredibly hands-on. And people used to think, you know, we used to go on air at 7 o'clock. People, my friends, think he'd turn up at 6 o'clock and just chat about football. But what went into that show was unbelievable. You talk all week. We had a WhatsApp group going, discussing ideas. Gary very much the forefront to start with. And then obviously Jamie came on board after a couple of years. And those guys were massively involved. And on the Sunday, we'd meet up after the Super Sunday game, discuss ideas, get into the office at sort of 8:30 in the morning, meet for a couple of hours, which for me as a football fan was fascinating because, you know, you'd be talking football and tactics and that type of thing and planning the show. And then we'd rehearse all afternoon from sort of 2 till 4 to get it right. And Gary Neville never had a note, you know. He was like Rain Man. He remembered everything. And he'd do things in rehearsal and he'd say, Gary, make sure you do that on the live show. And I'd have notes and my iPad and everything like that. But Gary never had a note. A phenomenon. And I think it's fair to say he changed football punditry with his honesty and his in-depth analysis. I think he changed. Even racing's affected by that now. You can't go on a show now in any sport and go through the motions. You've got to tell people at home something they don't know and be innovative. You really do. And I think he changed that single-handedly, personally.
Yeah, and in a weird way, it's almost added a little more pressure onto the role of the broadcaster and to the pundit, because suddenly the sporting fan woke up to the realisation that you can sit down and watch the analysis and really improve your sporting intelligence as a result of listening to somebody smart on the subject. So I guess you felt that when you were in racing as well, or working with any other pundit. I know Gary Neville sets a very, very high bar, but you do have to provide something now, not just entertainment, but a sense of education in an entertaining way, I'd suppose.
Spot on, absolutely spot on. That's what I'm always saying to my guys, be it Luke Harvey, Mick Fitzgerald, AP McCoy, Ruby Walsh, when we've had him on the show. You've always got to be telling people at home something they don't know. And that's where Luke at Cheltenham was so good down at the start, just explaining when a horse gets reshod or the way the start works, make people's ears prick up at home. Because in this day and age, unlike 10 years ago, there's so much information available to everybody via social media, the internet, that you've got to be different. You've always got to be different. And you know, the likes of Sir Anthony McCoy can tell you things that no one else can. Tactics in a horse race, that type of thing. And a lot of these guys take it for granted. But I'm always into them saying, no, use that. People at home don't know that. And hopefully, and I think they do it really well, they could always make people at home sit up and take notice.
Yeah, definitely Monday Night Football became a bit of a byword and still is for quality production, and as Owen says, for the level of in-depth, I guess, analysis that you can do and sort of properly inform that audience. In terms of your Cheltenham experience, we did want to talk a bit about, you mentioned the balance of power there, Ed. The Pressbury Cup, it's become known over the last few years. It's become a bit lopsided. It kind of swung in our favour, I think, about 2013. By and large, it's remained that way. You spoke about informing the audience about tell them something they don't know. So why is it swung in Ireland's favour so much?
Listen, guys, you know how it works in sport. These things go in cycles and waves. And at the moment, the Irish are dominant, and fair play to them. Because it's a number of factors, really. The good horses are staying in Ireland, which didn't used to happen back in the day. They'd all be sold and generally come over to this country. I think we saw last week Ireland have got two absolute genius trainers in Gordon Elliott and Willie Mullins. They are simply sensational. Plus, you've got those big powerhouses, Jigginstown, obviously JP McManus, Rich Ritchie, Simon Munir and Isaac Swade have got footpad, obviously, with Willie Mullins. And at the moment, the balance of power is very much with the Irish. And full marks to everyone who's made that happen, to the Irish authorities, the Horse Racing Ireland, everybody. But we'll be back. These things go in cycles. There's some great trainers over in this country, top horses. Don't forget, we won the Gold Cup, we won the Champion Hurdle, we won the Champion Chase. So it wasn't all totally one-sided. And in Nicky Henderson and Paul Nicholls and obviously Colin Tizard, who won the Gold Cup, we've got our own great trainers. It's just a cycle at the moment where the Irish are dominant. But from ITV's point of view and from Racing's point of view, we need the Brits to hit back. We need next year to be more balanced for the sake of the sport, because we all thrive on competition, don't we?
Just before we leave that, Ed, how is that going to happen? Like, is this a handicapping issue? Is it to do with prize money? How is that balance going to get reversed?
No, I don't think it's anything that drastic, really. I think that's just the way sport operates. Ireland has a lot of really good horses at the moment, and that's not going to stop, because you look at the likes of Sam Crow, and I mentioned Footpad, presenting Percy. The novices, the next breed, the next wave look like they might come from Ireland as well. But there's plenty of money over here. There's plenty of big owners over here, and obviously JP's got a big presence over here. So I think it's just that's the way sport operates. Look at the Champions League. The British teams have been really poor for years, but now, having been dominant for many years, sort of 8, 9, 10 years ago, and now it looks like with Man City and Liverpool, whoever comes through that could have a good chance of winning the Champions League. It's just the way sport works. And I don't think over here we need to panic about the handicapping system or anything like that. I think we will hit back, but we're having to weather a bit of an Irish storm at the moment, which is no bad thing, because those are beautiful horses over in Ireland at the moment, and full marks to those brilliant trainers that I've referred to.
Yeah, well, look, for what it's worth, we'd love you to win one, just to try and keep it interesting, keep it...
As if you mean that.
You mentioned some amazing trainers there, and obviously the main reason we have you on is to chat a bit about the flat season, which will start this weekend. It's Nason Sunday, and I know Aidan O'Brien flung open the doors of Ballydoyle during the week and got into some nitty-gritty about some of his horses. 28 Group 1 wins in 2017. What is it about this guy? What is he doing that's so special?
he's a very special guy with a very special operation. I was lucky enough. I came over to the Dublin Racing Festival, which was one of the best things I've done in a long time. And the next morning, actually, when I went to Johnny Murtaugh's yard and met up with the HRI guys, which was great. And then after that, I went to Aidan O'Brien's. And to go and see him off-season was fascinating, just to get into how his mind ticks. And he's got a brilliant team, but he's a genius in his own right for so many different reasons. His attention to detail, his team management. I was amazed when I went round the yard, because I finished at Sky when Leicester won the league, and I had 6 months to immerse myself in racing. Everything from, what a member of stable staff does over here to the top, what happens at Coolmore and Ballydoyle. And I was just amazed by the way Aidan goes about it. His man management is phenomenal. He knows every single person's name in that yard. He knows, and he looks after them. And listen, those horses, those Galileos, are beautifully bred, but you've still got to train them right, place them right, get them fit. And the guy is just in a league of his own. He is unbelievable. And his attention to detail, when you're at a race meeting with ITV, you really notice it, from the travel to what he does at the race course. And he sets the benchmark so high. And he's going to be, 28 Group 1 wins last year. I had no reason why he would stop. But I think the measure of the man was that day I went to see him, and his recent interview in the Racing Post. He talks about his daughter, Anna, who obviously had that horrendous fall. And she was there that day. And to chat to her and what she'd been through was very moving, actually. And it just says it all, that he says, what she went through totally overshadowed him breaking a world record, because that's what the O'Briens are like. They're an amazing, amazing family. They really are.
Yeah, it's well worth digging out some of those pieces. He speaks about Anna's memory loss, and it's definitely something worth checking out. To wrap up, he had picked out as well over the course of the pieces during the week a bunch of his own horses to watch out for. I'm wondering if you've got any insight for us, but he's talking about Sioux Nation, Saxon Warrior, Amadeo Magdagliani. What are you thinking in terms of, he's got such a range of horses across colts and fillies, etc. What are you thinking in terms of Aidan O'Brien, and maybe any specific horses or aspects of his yard that you feel that we should watch out for the year ahead?
So I think, I'm not so sure about the colts, to be honest with you. I think there's a bit of uncertainty, particularly about the 2,000 guineas. I personally like Elikam over here, the beautifully bred, a colt trained by Mark Johnson, a Frankel out of Attraction. I think the fillies he will dominate again, I think. I think Clemmy's the one who's very special. When she won, for Galileo to do what she did at Newmarket to win over 6 furlongs, you just thought, wow, if she can win over 6 furlongs, what's she going to do when they step her up to a mile? I think she could be absolutely different class. I know he said he's had a little bit of a hold-up with her, but he's still got 5-6 weeks to get that right before Newmarket. And I Can Fly is obviously an interesting filly as well, what he said about her. I think those fillies are just very, very special again. And they're going to get even better when you think we've got crops from the likes of Pound just around the corner. It is an amazing juggernaut he's got there that it will be very hard to stop. But if you ask me to pin down one for the season from Ballydoyle, I'm madly in love with Clemmy.
Right, okay. Excellent. Cool. All right, Ed, listen, good to chat with you. Thanks a million for taking the call.
Not at all. Good to speak to you guys.
Thanks a lot. Ed Chamberlin there on the line, ITV Racing commentator, interesting guy with a lot of good stuff to say. Visited Johnny Murtaugh, as I said, during the weekend team to meet their new syndicate horse, who's Lord Rapscallion. So it's a great name even to begin with. And Ed, along with Horse Racing Ireland, is promoting horse race ownership and syndication ahead of the exciting flat racing season when Lord Rapscallion is expected to start his racing career. You can visit racehorseownership.ie to find out more information on the opportunities of ownership and syndication.
Lord Rapscallion is the most flat horse racing name I've ever heard in my entire life. So I'm all behind Lord Rapscallion for the entire season. It's great to hear him talk in such glowing terms about Aidan O'Brien, that when it comes to a lot of these geniuses, it turns out that a lot of them are just really down-to-earth people, and that's half the battle, as in running a stable like that, knowing everybody's names, being a really nice guy. And he's not the first person to have said that Aidan O'Brien is a very genuine guy. And when it comes to the O'Brien family, I think Joseph is almost the epitome of how great this family is, because, of course, it seems like a ridiculous thing to say because of Aidan O'Brien's record-breaking year last year, but everybody, especially when it comes to horse racing trainers, is like, oh, but look at the resources at your disposal. Whereas with Joseph, some of the things he did last year, look what he did in Melbourne, it's just pure genius. It's like, this is clearly an unbelievable level of skill and an unbelievable level of perspiration to actually make this thing happen. And I think just the O'Brien gene is clearly present there, and that is a thing that exists, the O'Brien gene. And is it almost a case where they don't get as much credit as they deserve? Maybe not.
Look, I mean, you can start to go into the reasons of it, and I certainly wouldn't be informed enough to dissect all of that, but they obviously have a lot of very wealthy owners come to them with amazing race horses as well, so it's not as if they're working with a bunch of rapscallions on. They obviously they've got good stock in every way.
There's no question, but maybe it's only good stock and they turn it into great stock. Certainly Joseph O'Brien has done that with a couple of horses.
Good stuff. Right, we got to be done by 9 o'clock because myself and Owen are going to go and buy some Rolling Stones tickets, so Kevin Kilbane is going to have to get the squeeze on, and we've only got about 8 minutes to get out of here. We've a bunch of comments as well. Keep them coming into us on the hashtag OTB AM or on the Facebook page, YouTube, all of that good stuff. Owen will probably just buy them if we're still on air anyway. He'll probably just
I thought we were joking when we said we were going off air at 9 o'clock. I've got Ticketmaster loaded up here, so...
That doesn't surprise me at all. We are going to hear from Kevin Kilbane in just a moment. We're going to preview Ireland against Turkey tonight and get his thoughts as well on Wales' thumping of China yesterday. So Ryan Giggs' first game off to a bit of a flyer. But before all of that, let's hear from Dan MacDonald, who was on the show last night from Antalya ahead of this evening's game to preview that game. We spoke to him about Shane Duffy's progression, particularly from squad player to one of the leaders of the current side.
We spoke to Duffy yesterday, and certainly the evolution of his career it's there for all to see, almost symbolically this week, that he actually made his first start for Ireland, his first appearance for Ireland in 2014 when Martin O'Neill took over. It was a summer game against Costa Rica, probably comparable to this in terms of the squad. He was the new boy then, and now Duffy has almost ascended to this level where he's one of our handful of Premier League regulars. He's someone who's doing very well at Premier League level and may well be the subject of interest in the next couple of years, and he has a bit of status now, a bit of profile. And I mean, it's not long since the Euros when he was very raw, even Moldova away, when he made a mistake, and some very good judges, people like Richard Dunn, I think we're speaking on your show about the need for him to improve his decision making. It does feel that Duffy is at this other level now from where he was before, and I think I would expect him tomorrow to play and be a senior member of this group, because again, he is 26. It's not like he's 21 either. These guys come into the scene later, and they sometimes make that jump very quickly from new lad to senior player. And we've seen maybe Hendrick and Brady struggle a small bit with that transition during the World Cup campaign. Duffy didn't come in with that expectation, but I think he's carrying that expectation now. And you would expect them to, as you mentioned, to really step up.
Yeah, Dan MacDonald on the show with Nathan last night. OTB AM, of course, brought to you this morning with Air, the home of Air Sport. You can get yourself amazing live sporting content free with Air Broadband. Now, we are joined on the line by Kevin Kilbane. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, you get the name right. It's okay. How are you keeping?
Yeah, I mean, you do look as if you are literally just out of the bed. So
you two look quite fresh. It was a big night last night, wasn't it?
I didn't go, Kev. I was very professional, but Adrian had a very heavy night.
I tell you what happened, lads.
Adrian can't help himself. That's what it is.
I'll tell you what happened, lads. The people in the off the ball team who were committed to the future of the project and who were invested in their fellow colleagues, just as human beings, decided they'd turn up and sort of share the milk of human kindness. But you two chumps obviously decided against it.
You've just waffled two words out there. You said project. So anyway, I'll leave that one. I'm back in the UK. I couldn't make it. Obviously, could I? Clearly, yeah.
Well, look, it wasn't important enough to you, Kev. That's absolutely fine. We have a pressing issue here. We need to be done by 9 o'clock because, as you'll know, I'm sure you're going to be. Are you a Rolling Stones man? Are you?
I'm a massive huge Rolling Stones man. Yeah.
Are you going to get tickets? I mean, you probably have other connections that you don't need to worry yourself about sort of going online to get these things.
Let's just say I'm hoping to go anyway, yeah.
Good man. Well, look, if you have a +1 going there, you know where I am. Here, before we get stuck in, we want to obviously talk about the game tonight. It was just interesting to hear Dan there talk about Shane Duffy, and I've been reading some quotes from Martin O'Neill as well during the week. He tends to be maybe too honest at times, Martin O'Neill, about some of the recce's that he's done on some of his players, and he was talking about Shane Duffy particularly in his time at Leyton Orient, and he looked at him and he thought, actually, this guy's not a player. I don't think he's going to have much of a future. But he's a mainstay, one of the first names on that team now. Yeah,
it's something that I maybe spoken about a few times. I'd spoken to David Moyes maybe 6 or 7 years ago now. Shane Duffy was 19, 20. He was not really able to make that breakthrough at Everton. And David Moyes said to me, he genuinely believed when he gets to 26, 27, you're going to see a top-class centre-half. He's just got to develop the fundamentals of the game. And I think he went away, as you say, on loan. Yeovil, I think with Yeovil, when he started to progress properly, when he had a full season away on loan, came back, obviously then went to Blackburn and then signed for Blackburn properly. And he had to go and maybe learn his trade, learn the game down through the leagues, and now all of a sudden he's come back and it looks like a poor deal from Everton's point of view for the price that they actually let him go to Blackburn Rovers for, seeing the level that he's playing at for Brighton. But I think he's one that's developed into a top class player now, and you can see that the standard that he's keeping every week under Chris Hughton.
Yeah, and the leadership qualities that he shows even outside of his footballing capabilities on the pitch as well. He, I'm sure you're all over his Instagram feed, but he was posting last night a bunch of an Instagram story of a load of the new guys coming in and doing their initiation song. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's
no, I've
actually
just started to follow him in the last week. So yeah, I missed that though. I'm not up on social media like yourself, Adrian.
No, I only properly sort of started getting into Instagram last night. So you have a follow coming soon. But he posted all this stuff, streaming new players, and O'Neill has been kind of talking this week about he's not going to do anything radical, he says, in terms of the team selection ahead of this game against Turkey tonight in Antalya. Is that the right thing to do you think, Kev, in terms of steadying the ship post-Denmark particularly, or is this really an opportunity for a blank slate?
Well, there's options there anyway because of the injuries and maybe pull-outs of the squad. So there's options for new faces, or at least newish faces, people maybe that have been around the squad that have not necessarily had game time in the past. So that's a thing that he's got that he'll have to do anyway. That he's got no other options really in that respect. We've spoken early on this week when we had Dan on the show with Joe and myself on Monday talking about is the potential there to change the system. Dan was talking about there was a 12v11 training match on the Monday afternoon, and we'd spoken of the variations. Could he go with the 3 at the back? Could he go with 4? Is he maybe going to try and change things up, go 2 up front, try and play someone in support with Shane Long, get Sean Maguire into the side? And there's a lot of options to him there anyway. But I think the fundamentals of the team is, first and foremost, I think getting Seamus Coleman back into the squad is a huge plus. Getting him some game time back in amongst the players, I think, is a huge plus for him as well. Shane Duffy, as you say there, James McLean would be another one. They're the mainstays of the side. So I think it might be important that you get these lads into the team, but integrate 1 or 2 new faces into the side, maybe in the starting 11, and then I think as the game progresses, I think we'll see 1 or 2 more of the newer players coming in and getting some matches. I think that's the way it has to be. But I think it will be important. It's vitally important that Martin O'Neill has had a look at these lads all week. And as I said, those sort of practice matches are the ideal scenarios for Martin O'Neill to get to look at the players.
Yeah, Sean Maguire has been talked about a lot in the press as well this week, and I guess the general question around it and the general angle on Maguire has been the leading light at number 9 for Ireland, whether or not he'll be able to hold down that jersey, whether or not he'll be able to grow into that jersey. Like, obviously you kind of know Sean Maguire better than most people, Kev. Like, do you think that he's a guy who'll take this all in his stride, that this sort of pressure that's kind of automatically being put on him almost by default, without doing him an injustice? He's obviously an outstanding player who's still on the rise, but it seems that we've looked around at our options and it's like, right, it's got to be Sean Maguire.
Yeah, it is. It's spot on. No matter what we say, there is a different type of pressure on Shawnee now. He's gone into Preston, and yes, he started well, didn't get a lot of game time in his natural position early on this season. But I think when he's come back from injury, and he has been excelling, but I think there's a certain amount of pressure on him because of the expectations we're all putting on him for his performances at Preston. Now this will be a different level for him. I think it helps that the game is away from Dublin, his first match, or his not so much his first match, but I think certainly with the pressure that's on him at the moment, I think it's better that it's over there in Turkey. He can get away from the spotlight to an extent and try to get some game time away from it all, because there's going to be huge pressure on him, and it's how he copes with it. No matter what we all think, the level of pressure playing for Ireland with the players and the levels that they're playing at, this is different altogether. And some can handle it, some can't, and I think that's the way it's got to be now with Shawnee, because we'll see now whether or not he can now go and fully establish himself at international level. I think he has the talent, he's got the ability. We know that. We know he is that type of player that we've been missing, we've been seriously lacking. But it's whether or not he himself can handle that pressure. And I think that is the huge word and the huge thing that's going to be surrounding Shawnee now over the next year or two, is can he handle the expectations that will be on his shoulders?
caught trying to buy Rolling Stones tickets. Nabbed.
All I can say is the Wi-Fi isn't very good in here. Searching for tickets, it wouldn't let me change the number either. So
are you buying me tickets? Was that what you were asking me there?
I was, but it's only allowed me to buy 2. So apologies to my friends who I said I'd try with.
You and all the Kerry men, you'll have about 25 different people all set up buying 5 and 6 tickets each anyway, won't you? So
there's a Rolling Stones VIP package here, Kev. So I mean, that's got your name written all over it, I'm sure.
How much is that? That's only for executives like you. Adrian. How much is that?
How much is that? Let's have a look now and see. Let's wait for the Wi-Fi to load up here.
Well, I think while you're doing that, I think I'm okay anyway, Kev. We may as well move on with this conversation. I mean, I think I am. It's adding to my card. Hopefully the Wi-Fi holds up in here. Yeah, there we go. Oh my God, they're way more expensive than I thought. Jeez.
How much are
they? They're showing up. I'm after buying gold tickets. That is not what I want.
How much are they?
Apparently, I'm trying to purchase tickets that are worth €181 each, which is so I'll be anybody. That's like seat wave prices. Anyway, we got to stick with this. Okay, we got to stick with the football. Liam Kelly on the back of the Irish Daily Star this morning. He still wants the Ireland career. Have we all got a little bit of ahead of ourselves here that maybe Liam Kelly wasn't showing any disrespect to Martin O'Neill with his text message? Maybe he was just being a little bit blasé about it, as young people can be, and it's not really a story, and he's just focused on Reading and ensuring that they finish the season strongly in the era of a new manager.
Of course he's going to try and protect himself. If you get called up, as far as well, I would think it's the way I see it. What would you have wanted to do when you were a young lad? What would you lads wanted to do? What would anyone wanted to have done when you were a kid growing up in your chosen sport? You're 15, 16, 17, 18, whatever it is, and you're dreaming. And it was. I mean, again, we're in probably a different era. Maybe lads might not necessarily dream of playing for Ireland now, but I'm fairly convinced a lot of the lads who I would speak to, whether that would be the Colemans, the McLeans, the Duffys, the John O'Shea's, maybe of the lads that have gone past. You think about where you're going to be. You want to play international football for Ireland. If you get a call up, even if you've got a little niggle and you're a young man, you go and play no matter what it is. And if he's had a call up and he said, I just want to take my time at the moment. I want to weigh up my options. Nah, I don't buy it, Owen. I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that.
One thought that I had was that he had, I don't know if Martin O'Neill or somebody had texted him and said, listen, we'd like to invite you into the squad. And then he had text back and said whatever he had said. But I mean, the text had become the understood means of communication. There's been a lot made about him not picking up the phone. Maybe that was just the understood means of communication. Anyway, there wasn't any actual direct quote from him himself in the piece today. So we're actually still unsure kind of where he sits.
He remains committed to the boys in green, reads the line here, which is an exclusive by Martin Cadden. I would probably trust the sources here in terms of there being a good line there. But
but you know what, Owen?
Owen,
Liam Kelly's not 18, he's not 17, he's not just breaking into the game. He's been around football for a long time. Whether that goes through Reading's website and he does a piece to camera there, or he does the in-house interview and just clarifies the situation. He's not a kid anymore. You can't get away with saying what's been, or you can't get away with doing what he's done if he's now fully going to be committed down the line. He has to just make a statement, clarify things, even if that comes out through his agent and just says, look, there's a misunderstanding here, we're really sorry about this, but he's fully committed. That's not come out. That's where he needs to actually clarify the situation here.
One thought that I had, Kevin, it's a pretty grim one, I'll admit that like Shawnee Maguire, is obviously a lot of call to get him involved in the squad. We're not sure where Martin O'Neill sits on it, and he's fine. He's obviously produced some very good moments for Preston over the last little while. There's obviously John Walters is there, Shane Long is there. He's never really done it over a sort of a consistent basis for us. We're lacking a recognised regular goal scorer at a top level. Does it all ultimately mean that no matter what's happening here, and O'Neill is talking this week, you mentioned the shape, he's talking this week about 3-5-2, and he's going to see how that goes, and there's going to be debate about who goes where in that system. But lacking that regular, recognised striker at a top level, is this ultimately doomed no matter what happens? We don't have somebody who can score goals.
Well, it's not doomed, but I'll definitely take your point. We're seriously lacking that. When Robbie Keane wasn't necessarily getting the game time and he moved on to LA Galaxy over the last 5 or 6 years, we've been saying, what will happen when Robbie Keane goes? Where's this next player coming from? And we haven't had it consistently since Robbie. We haven't got that. That's why we pin our hopes on a player that's playing at championship level. And yeah, Preston are a decent championship side. They're not a top level championship club. We've got to be realistic with that as well. But surely Maguire has got the potential to go on to the next level, and that's maybe something that Owen would talk about before, and the pressure that we're putting on him. He's still got a long way to go. He's not 17, 18 breaking into the game, but he's a young man that's progressing quite well at the moment. This is the thing that we're seriously lacking. Our game in general has to start developing players that are able to play at first of all, I would think as well, yes, international level, but the next level above that, I suppose, is playing Premier League and Champions League football. The pressure around international football is different, but the level above is playing Premier League football and certainly playing at top-class Premier League football.
We'll see what happens with that game tonight. Ireland against Turkey and Antalya. It's a 5:30 kick-off, I think, Irish time this evening, so we'll see what happens in terms of Martin O'Neill's selections and all of that good stuff. One other thing before we let you go, I'm still, by the way, loads of people apparently have turned up today is the message I'm getting here, and I'm still sort of waiting to see if I can get tickets. But at least I'm in with you, Owen, anyway.
I released those tickets. I'm not paying 181 quid.
Oh, they're gone! Oh, my God.
If you were willing to fund me, Kevin, maybe I would have...
I would have funded you. If you'd have only you need to ask, I would have funded you there, yes.
Too late now, he's let them go. Here, Ryan Giggs, first game in charge, his Wales team... His Wales team, a population of 3 million people, have beaten China, a nation of 1.5 billion people, 6-0. This guy's a genius.
Well, I mean, yeah, we know that the footballing heritage, as Jose Mourinho said recently,
the project,
China is,
Kev,
yeah, you love a project going on. No, I think you look at it. I tell you what. Now, if we would have played China yesterday, would we have won 6-0? I think it's fair to say we probably wouldn't, because we don't go and blow a side away. So I think you've got to look at it from the fact is that they've got a world-class superstar in Bale. I didn't watch the game. I saw the highlights of the game, and Bale was simply outstanding with his finishing, with his movement. They looked good. There was plenty of good attacking movement from them. It's a start. That's the only thing you can build it as, I think, for Ryan Giggs. You can't draw too much in it because the defending was simply shocking from China, the way that they allowed a lot of their attacking players into goal-scoring positions. But it's a great start for him. You can't really do any more than that. I think he would have been criticised if it hadn't been an outstanding performance, and now he's won 6-0 and he gets the Adrian Barry reaction. So if you can't please Adrian Barry, you're pleasing no one.
Genius, Kev. That's you heard it here first.
I think this is a genius move by Ryan Giggs to go into the Wales job, because ultimately when you're trying to learn, you've got to weigh up the options about how can I learn as quickly as possible and how can I not fail too badly that I don't ever get another job. So you've got to have that sort of wiggle room, and I think we can all accept that international football isn't exactly the pinnacle in comparison to a Champions League club, should Ryan Giggs have ever stepped up to the Manchester United job. So there's a little bit of a lower standard, plus they've got players like Aaron Ramsey, Gareth Bale coming off the back of a very disappointing World Cup qualification campaign, more places going for the Euros, of course, in the next campaign, so they should qualify. It means it's going to be relatively successful should he qualify. It's certainly not going to be a disaster, and he's picked up some sort of footballing nous, or some knowledge of footballing heritage, shall we say, Kevin. So I think it's a win-win for Ryan Giggs here, barring some sort of disaster.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's the perfect job for him. It is. And you throw into that mix, for a fact that you've got Gareth Bale there. I mean, we know full well if Gareth Bale would have been in Cardiff and we would have played them, when was that, September, October time, it could have been a different way, the way that result went for us. But I think in general, it's a perfect one for him. It is. It's the perfect chance for him to go and progress, and I think get those decent players to the Euros, because I think they probably will qualify. You're right.
Kev, cheers.
There you go, lads.
Take it
cheers,
easy,
boys.
Good luck.
Take it easy,
Have
lads.
a good weekend. Kevin
You
Kilbane
too.
on the line.
Take it easy.
It did. Todd also struck me that Gareth Bale scores a hat-trick, comes off to a standing ovation. The main thing for him is that it's good for Gareth Bale, because he goes to China, a nation of 1.5 billion people, and has an absolute stormer.
Yeah, Wales beating China would be even bigger than Mayo beating Dublin in terms of population.
Let's not go there, is what I would suggest this morning. I'm still waiting to get tickets here. sort of, are you back in?
No, I don't think I'm getting. Oh, I've just got a message from a friend of mine. No luck. It says the WhatsApp group.
They're not gone though, are they? Are they?
It might. I would say keep trying.
Keep trying. Do not bounce out of the page, is what I'm being told here. So I'm going to take that instruction quite literally and not do that. That is pretty much it, I think, from us for the minute. Pack show coming your way this evening, including the chance to win yourself a pretty nice prize, it has to be said. Bank of Ireland are giving over their jersey sponsorship to the Irish Heart Foundation for Munster and Leinster rugby games upcoming. So the Irish Heart Foundation, in association with Bank of Ireland, have teamed up with 300,000 schools to launch the CPR for Schools training programme, equipping teachers and students with life-saving training. And you could win yourself a pair of tickets to Munster's Champions Cup quarter-final. It's against Toulon. It's at Thomond Park. And you can also win yourself a nice little overnight stay at the Clayton Hotel for your trouble. So to be in with a chance to with a chance to win there, tune in to Off the Ball tonight on News Talk from 7 o'clock. And it's all with thanks to Bank of Ireland and sponsor for a day, the Irish Heart Foundation. There's some other good stuff as well upcoming on across the various Off the Ball shows over the weekend, including with Nathan tonight and over the weekend. And on there'll be no Premier League live on Today FM this weekend on.
Because there is no Premier League.
And now That's Right Called Sport will be in situ as always on 98 FM at 9 AM on Sunday morning. That's pretty much it from us on, I think.
Yeah, thanks for everything
Very
today.
Enjoyable. Thanks to everybody behind the scenes as well who pulled an absolute stormer together after our production team all ended up in A&E. Not related to being at Johnny Fox's last night, it has to be said, that we know of.
I wasn't in Johnny Fox's, so I can't speak for that, but I have my suspicions.
That's it from us for this morning. Owen and Gerald will be back on your phones and your laptops and your PCs and all of that good stuff at 7:45 on Monday morning. But from us for this morning, good morning.
OTB AM.
In association with Air. Get Air Sport free with Air Broadband.